This one. You know why?
Well, the eagle's been flying slow, and our flag been flying low.
Why? Because this
But you can take it just from me and some freaks
is the deepest
out a thing or two to tell you.
and most beautiful,
Stumble, but she never fell. And if you Russians don't believe us,
gorgeous
I'll go straight to hell. We gonna put our feet back on the path. Righteousness and the
gorge in all the lands.
Well, I never did think that it ever would happen again. In America, did y'all never did think that we ever get together again? Well, damn, so fools, you walking real proud and we'll talk real loud again. In America, well, I never did think that we ever get together again. From the sound of Long Island out to San Francisco Bay, and everything that's in between's our home. Now we get done a little bit of fighting amongst ourselves. You outside people best leave us alone.
What's going on over there? Give me a bumps getting lit. Bumps getting lit!
You just go and lay your hand on a LA Cobra fan. I think that you're gonna finally understand.
Hey Trails Collective, Ian and Ellie here with the Trails Collective Weekly Rundown for July 1st, 2020. We led in with a clip from Matt Lipsey. For those of you who've been checking in on some of our weekly rundowns, you've seen several videos that I've rolled in from Matt, and we'll hope to formalize and develop the Lipschitz Variety Show TV section on the Trails Collective website here pretty shortly. Right now you can see a list of some of his videos under the YouTube playlist for the Trails Collective, but always pretty entertaining. So this week myself and Ellie are going to clue you in a little bit into, I guess, one result from this past week, some of the FKTs that went down, some of the other efforts that were going on in the region. Ellie will cue you in to break down some of the media in case you want to go try to catch the full episodes, and I'll let you know if there's an event on the way or some of the events that would have been coming this coming weekend. And then we'll take you out at the end here with a clip from Scott and Debbie Livingston from a pretty grand adventure that they just threw down in Connecticut a weekend or so ago. So let's get into it. Possibly the only formal event this past weekend was from Bishop's Events down with their Freedom 5K, 10K, and 10 mile. It's part of their Spring Endurance Series, which I think was just wrapping up. And it was at least in part to benefit the Wounded Warrior Project. They had 18 runners in the 5K, won by Brandon Gonzalez and Hannah Hawkins. 8 in the 10K, won by Brian Brow and Hayden Hemphill. And 9 in the 10 mile, won by Bill Starr and Suzanne McDermott. Possibly the most, one of the hardest routes that I guess I've seen in some time. Ryan Thorpe and De'Vang, who many of you know, put in a pretty, well, let's start with Ryan. Ryan had a pretty stout pre-COVID lineup for 2020. I'll plug here and what that looked like. But for all of you who know Ryan, know that he chooses some pretty gnarly events with a lot of elevation gain, and is just a tough dude out there. So he was partnering with one of my MPF, our R&R teammates, De'Vang, and they were going to set off on the Manitou's 100. And so for all of you who may be familiar with Manitou's Revenge, going on point-to-point race in the Catskills, know that it's one of the, if not the toughest, probably 50-mile race, for sure one of them in the country. So for them to do an Outback format or to do a double Manitou's, that's just pretty burly. Around 100 miles, I think over 30,000 feet of elevation gain, some really technical stretches paired with, I think, them getting a good amount of rain and water this past weekend. I imagine it was pretty wild. Touch base with Ryan and connecting with De'Vang now, and we'll hopefully get some video clips from them to roll into next week's weekly rundown for a bit of a snapshot on that front. Additionally, there's another crew out there with Aaron Stredney and Seamus Nugent. And
Seamus, what happened?
I don't think we stuck the landing.
You're lucky to be alive, man.
Right. There's a lot of sharp in here.
I think a few others that were out just in what should have been the Manitou's run-through weekend. So hopefully, again, we can bring you some of that going forward. Let's see. Where I'm filming right now, and actually there's a boat coming in behind me on vacation in an island up in the St. Lawrence River. It's pretty gorgeous, pretty choice island that has some great running opportunities as well as just being on the river. So pretty wonderful. But yeah, here comes a boat. In any case, getting into the FKT boards. We're going to start off with New York, and specifically noting one of the individuals, Kelly McDonald, which I've mentioned a few times in the previous, I think, month or two, as she's gotten out and set a couple FKTs on her own. And I just reached out to see whether she'd be up for sharing a bit about what FKTs have meant for her, particularly in the craziness of how this year's been. So in just this past week, she set two. She ran a 3:15 in the Huckleberry Loop trail in Margaretville, and then a 3:41 for the Peekamoose and Table section. And so what I'd like to do now is just segue in a little bit from Kelly. So Kelly, take it.
Hi, this is Kelly MacDonald. I'm a trail runner in Sackett's Harbor, New York, a small village located way upstate on Lake Ontario. I've been here for about a year after spending 4 years in the DC area, and I am feeling very grateful for the 2020 running season and to be spending it here in New York. One benefit that I've had as a healthcare worker in the isolated North Country is that my life hasn't changed a whole lot with coronavirus, with the exception of having some really strict travel restrictions for work. I'd also already planned to back off my racing schedule after moving to New York. I did not do a good job with that in 2019 because there are just so many amazing races to experience in New York. But COVID has done a really good job of holding me to that original goal in 2020. So I've actually had time to slow down and recover from some grueling years that I had in DC. And I really savored that initial pause that we had in March. But I very quickly grew stir crazy and I started to branch out to the Western Adirondacks, which I'd previously overlooked because there are no big mountains out there. Despite the lack of big mountains, I fell in love with the trails there after a nice snowy day at Cranberry Lake. And so a few weeks later, when we had some exceptionally dry weather in the spring, I impulsively decided to run the whole 50 miles around the lake. And it ended up being a great adventure. Tons of wildlife, beautiful forest, lots of lake views, and lots of beaver ponds and beaver dams. And when I was uploading my route later that night, I realized there was one other FKT route within my tiny little travel radius that I was allowed to go. So I tried that the next weekend and had a lot of fun with it. So when my travel restrictions eased up a bit after that and I was able to go to the Finger Lakes, I tried some of the FKT routes down there. And then just last weekend, a new route opened up in Winona State Forest, which is really close to where I live. So of course I had to try that one as well. Even though the summer is not a great time for me to run fast, I don't like the heat, I think I'm going to use the FKT website to keep trying some interesting trails. So FKTs have been a really fun way for me to replace the adventure, connecting with beautiful trail and forest and the trail running community, the things that I miss most about racing. If this had been a normal year, I would not have fit a 50-mile route around Cranberry Lake into my busy racing schedule, and I don't think I would have discovered FKTs. Of course, I understand that 2020 has involved a lot of loss and disappointment for people, but for those of us who have been lucky enough to have our jobs and our health intact, it's presented a lot of opportunity for us to take a step back from our typical routines, reconnect with pure running, with the trails, and find some time for things that we've maybe been too busy to do in recent years, whether that's exploring new trails, investing more in our relationships, or even taking some time to do some challenging reading and reflection and discussion to learn a bit more about how we ended up with 2020 and all the tragedy that we've seen this year. On a brighter note, I hope everybody is staying happy and healthy and still running, and I'm so excited to see people at races again, just as soon as it's safe and I'm allowed to travel to them.
Thanks, Kelly. And for any of you out there, I'll reach out when I see something cool that happened. Always would be great to see if I can weave in some of the thoughts from Out in the Trails Collective experiences, some video of beautiful places. Touch base with me and let me know if you got a grand adventure, or not even a grand adventure planned, but just want to weigh in. Let's see next, or further in New York. Ted Arkilla and Michelle Zandona on the Five Sisters Loop in 4:10. Carson Albanese, taken I think as FKT of this past month, ran a 2:29 for the Onondaga Trail. Zeno Carpenter, new, ran a 6 hour 31 minutes for the Crescent Trail. Charlotte Winkler, 10:44 for the Great High Peaks Traverse. It's a burly 27-mile point-to-point with 15,000 feet of gain. And just because this looks like a pretty outstanding, I think this is an inaugural mark that she just set. But just to cue you in on what this route is, and I'll just read here. The route connects to 12 trailed peaks connected in the arc in the High Peaks region of the Adirondack Mountains. It starts with the Great Range, which is Lower Wolfjaw, Upper Wolfjaw, Armstrong, Gothic, Saddleback Basin, Haystack, and Mount Marcy, and then adding on Skylight, Colden, Algonquin, and Wright to complete the arc. The traverse includes 7 of the 11 highest peaks in the Adirondacks. The elevation gain and technical and rocky and cliffy trails make this traverse an amazing challenge. It's similar to the Bob Marshall Traverse, however, replaces Big Slide and Mount Joe, one of the most wild and steep iconic peaks. It's a point-to-point route between Lake and Hart Lake in the Adirondack Lodge. So sounds pretty outstanding. It'd be great if we could get some clips from that, if she has any, and maybe we'll try to connect. In Connecticut, Ian Connell ran 2:11 on the Manitou Trail. Andrew Burford, Sleeping Giant State Park section in 59 minutes, 58 seconds. And Justin Kowski, who keeps getting out there over these past couple months, ran a 14:11 for the Mattabesset Trail. And I didn't get a chance to click on that, but that's got to be that one lowered a few times, unless that's a different configuration there. In Maryland, Michelle Benshoff ran a 5:11 for the Catoctin National Scenic Trail. In Massachusetts, Richie Rodriguez ran a 13:29 for the Cape Cod Traverse. That might be a cool one to see how that was. Greg Pazulcia, 2:26 for the Greylock AT Traverse. And Art, how are you, buddy? Beauregard, 4 days, 5 hours for the Bay Circuit Trail. In Maine, Jesse Wall and Carissa Winning set one for the Bigelow Range Traverse. In New Hampshire, Josh Burns back on deck for the Prezi. Ran 11:28 for the Double Traverse, shaving off 90 minutes off of what was Adam Wilcox's prior time. I did reach out to Josh, and hopefully we can get a clip from him, as I know that that whole range and traverse is pretty special to him. So we'll see if we can bring that to you in the next week or so. Spencer Holland ran a 12:12 for the 43-mile Super Pemi loop. That would also be probably a pretty amazing loop, I would imagine. Kelsey Rex, a 1:57 for the Franconia Ridge Loop. Phoebe Seltzer ran 14 hours, 35 minutes for the Swan Song Gulf Song Loop. And Ian Ridgway, another route on the board, continuing to get out there and exploring. 5:49 for the Belknap Range. In Pennsylvania, Brian Cunningham ran a 1:54 for the Quebec Run Outer Loop. Rhode Island, on the boards here, Liz Allen ran a 1:57 for the Arcadia Mount Tom Trail. And last up in our region, in Vermont, Robert Reeves ran a 7:58 for the Cross Moxalumu Trail. Coming at us this week, we've got Ellie. A little bit of what happened or what was shaken in the media boards this past week. So take it, Ellie.
Hey Trails Collective, Ellie here, and it's time for your podcast and media for the week. Let's start with the gang from Cultra. They put out 3 episodes this week. The first was with Alex Cabrera after he ran the Cut 112. The Cut 112 is a brutal 112-mile course running across Connecticut, and it links together some of the most toughest Connecticut Blue Blaze trails. Alex Cabrera is a tough man, having grown up in the Dominican Republic, serving in the U.S. Army, and training in the trails of New Hampshire. Alex shares what it was like to pursue a finish at the Cut 112, facing off against heat, humidity, and the relentless Tap Rock trails. All this was fueled by positive love from his family, and he was a very special person to listen to. The next two were part of their Culture Personality series. The first one with Bill Gibbs, and the second one with the Livingstons, a Northeast trail running power couple. You won't want to miss these 3 interviews this week. Jay Friedman put out a new episode from the Paid Cave called Gender Equality and the Ultimate Aid Station Draft with Eliza LaPierre and Phil Vondra. Jay was joined in the Pain Cave first by Eliza LaPierre, an elite ultra runner, to discuss the gender gap in ultra running and steps we can take to open the sport up to more female athletes. Because trail running, although marathoning is now 55% skewed towards the females, trail running is still about 80-20 male to female ratio. They then also talked about the recent Sean Blanton RD controversy because Eliza has run the Georgia Death Race 2 times. You won't want to miss what she feels. You won't want to miss her comments and thoughts about the races. Then Phil jumped in with them to discuss the elements that make a great aid station. They each chose 1 sweet food, 1 salty food, 1 hot drink, 1 hot food, 1 sports drink, 1 non-sports drink, 1 item at the aid station, and 1 person or celebrity at the aid station. You'll have to listen to hear what they chose, but it got me thinking about mine. So I know y'all want to hear, so here's my perfect aid station. Salty food, pickles, 100%. Doesn't matter if they're hamburger slices or spears, I will take it. Sweet food, watermelon, or PB&J. Smucker's jelly, extra sweet, that's fine. Hot food, noodle soup. Or at the JFK 50 miler, if they just have hot broth, you crunch some potato chips into that broth, slurp it down, you're dining in high quality. Sports drink, Mountain Dew, because Mountain Dew should only be drank when you're running or doing something hard, let's be serious. So Mountain Dew at mile 40, 100%. Non-sports drink, either sparkling water or cold brew. Emphasis on the cold brew. It's just like life-giving. Excuse me. Item at an aid station, I said petroleum jelly, not squirrel's nut butter or Body Glide, petroleum jelly. Why? Because you can use it on your lips, and also it's good for lube. You never know when you need it. Celebrity at the aid, my heart would definitely stop if Ellie Greenwood was at any aid station that I came into. Not only was she named after me, but like she's really Canada's like best ultra runner. So I mean, come on, we're just connected. But I encourage you to listen to the episode and share in the comments what would be your perfect aid station. Life is Trail Running put out a video called New Trails to Explore in Kirkland. I encourage you to check it out. It's really beautiful out there. For the Trails Collective Media this week, I want to take a minute to highlight a few videos that Ian and I put out. So I put out 3 interviews last week. The first one I mentioned last week was with Fred Marolo, a 14,000 day streaker who just keeps on going. That was really fun to record, and so if you haven't already, please check that out. On Friday, I put out an episode with my friend Laura Klein. Laura was the first elite ultra runner that I knew, and she welcomed me into the community of trail and ultra running with open arms. She has impressive finishes at both local races like the Comset 50K National Championship and the Cayuga Trails 50 Mile National Championship, as well as abroad. She's run the CCC and also a few other international races that I honestly need a degree to even speak out loud. I love chatting with my dear friend, and we dove into all things running, strength training, sponsorships, and how she's changed as an athlete the more she learns about herself. Go check it out right now. The third and special interview I put on Saturdays was with Sheila and Eric Egan. These 2 trailblazers make me want to be a better human, not simply just a better runner. As mentioned in the news show last week, they just completed something incredible, a couch to 40 mile 8-week training plan, which ended in a 42-mile run at Letchworth State Park on the Many on the Jenny course. They finished this last Saturday, so of course I had to get all the details, and I'm so glad I did. This conversation was absolutely inspiring and soul uplifting. So if you need any motivation to move your ass today, watch that video. And I will definitely have Eric and Sheila on separately in the coming weeks. So be ready for that. I wanted to end this by just talking a little bit about what I've been doing recently, because it's not trail running. I had ambitions of running ultras this spring and summer, and I was really into it, ready to take a break from the marathon training that I had been doing. But as the world changed, my body also had other plans, and so I haven't really been getting out on the trails much at all. But I'm here with you guys in spirit, and I feel like everybody else running on trails and doing these amazing things is just something we all need right now. So personally, I've been spending a lot of time on the road, doing shorter workouts, not crushing tons of mileage, but doing things that really are challenging my body, but also just giving me a little bit more direction and purpose right now. So that's a little bit of an update for me. And I'll see if I can get some updates from other ultra runners that you might want to hear from in the coming weeks as well. And that's all for me today. So back to you, Ian.
All right, thanks, Ellie. And another piece of media that we just released just yesterday was an initial review of the new Brooks Catamount trail shoe. It should hit market, I think, the beginning of August, so a few weeks, actually a month from now. But check it out, pretty smooth running shoe. I'm not sure if it's necessarily built for some of the technical terrain in the Northeast here. But it definitely has a really nice, bouncy, responsive ride. So check out the full review of the Brooks Catamount. Next week, I'm going to try to see if I can get one on the board that maybe I already mentioned for the VJ Max shoe. Relatively newer foray for them into the U.S. market. They have a big hold so far in the OCR world. Not as much in terms of bumping over onto the straight trail scene. But myself and Ben Nephew, teammate Jan Welford, have a pair now, and they're feeling pretty good. So we'll try to bring you a review of that here shortly. So in terms of this past week, or actually this coming week rather, similar to Bishop's event from last weekend, one of I think the only one formal events that is running that I'm aware of will be the Fireworks 5K 10K in Fairfax Station, Virginia. It's still on for July 5th as part of their, must be leading into the summer series. And in this case, portions of the proceeds benefit the Semper Fi Fund. You can register now at bishopseventregistrations.com, and I'll plug it in the show notes. And some of the considerations, they'll have waves of less than 50 people, and masks encouraged for pre and post race. But if you're feeling bold and want to head out there, check out Bishop's Events fireworks races this weekend. COVID canceled events that would have been this weekend. We would have Conquer the World Endurance's Red Wing 10K and 10 Mile Challenge in LaGrangeville, New York. We would have had the Angevine Farm Half Marathon in Warren, Connecticut. We would have had one that's one of the older, I think, trail and ultras in our region, probably one of the older ones in the country, is the Finger Lakes 50s in Hector, New York. This would have been their 31st running this year. That's one in my relative backyard. I was able to run and win the 50K in a prior year. And it's a really great course for beginners and for those looking for quick times alike. In some of the more recent years, they've had some really heavy rains, and paired with how it traverses through some of the cow pastures, somewhat been known for really deep mud. So that definitely slows things down. But it's a really wonderful event. It sells out, I think, in minutes or hours when the registration opens. So I don't know whether all entrants will roll over into 2021 or whether they'll have open slots. But for those of you who are looking for a really grassroots, old school, classic feeling trail and ultra race, check out the Finger Lakes 50s put on by the Finger Lakes Runners Club. And then we would have had the Freedom Run in Newport, Vermont. And on their website or event page, it says, what better way to celebrate the 4th and our nation's independence from the overlording Brits than a trail run along the shores in the woods by Lake Memphremagog. I probably butchered that. They say we celebrate freedom from tyranny, freedom from asphalt, freedom to choose your distance. We have expanded our options to include a 10-mile, 10K, 5K, and 1 mile. So in honor of the Freedom Runs, inspiration and celebration, and for all those who are wishing to reflect on some of the most patriotic clips throwing off the reins of British tyranny for the 4th, thankfully we've been able to find some patriotic historical clips captured and restored in full color. And whether as a nod to my own Scotch-Irish ancestry, and whether it's Mel Gibson, played by William Wallace, amassing an army of his countrymen in this clip before the Battle of Stirling Bridge in 1297, or where, given he's a god, Mel Gibson, in this case played by Benjamin Martin, was thankfully alive 479 years later in 1776 to recruit militiamen in this bar to go on to again defeat the British. But sometimes, and heaven knows we need it right now, our most patriotic inspiration isn't drawn from heroes in a time of war, but instead from relatively unknown moments of extreme patriotism in the workplace. So in that, I'll give you this visual to take you into your holiday weekend.
I'm sorry if I offended anyone. I mean, you do all know that I'm way proud to be an American, right? You do know that I love this country more than absolutely anything?
Of course, yeah.
Well, I'm sorry you had to see my ass cheeks.
But we do hope you're going to have a wonderful holiday weekend on deck. Hopefully you're going to get out, be able to hit some trails, spend some time with family or friends. To take you out this week, we're going to, as I mentioned, hopefully inspire you with a clip from Scott and Debbie Livingston, a pretty awesome adventure couple and family, and one that they completed just this past week. So enjoy. Thanks for tuning in with us this week, and I will check in here from the river and trails next week. Happy 4th of July.
Hey, this is Scott and Debbie Livingston checking in from Bolton, Connecticut, to talk a little bit about our 2020 New England Trail end-to-end adventure. I want to thank the Trails Collective for giving us an opportunity to just, check in. We covered 242 miles, going from the summit of Monadnock in New Hampshire to Long Island Sound and Guilford, Connecticut. The trail is one of 11 national scenic trails. Our total time was 5 days, 11 hours, and 46 minutes. It was a new route, but we also set the FKT for the traditional New England Trail from the New Hampshire-Massachusetts border to the Sound. AMC and CFPA, that's the Appalachian Mountain Club, the Connecticut Forest and Park Association, are the National Park Service's partners for this trail. AMC looking after the trail in Massachusetts and CFPA in Connecticut. One of the interesting things that we did is it was all human powered. We crossed the Connecticut River from Hadley, Massachusetts to East Hampton using one of our kayaks, which we spotted. This was a self-supported adventure and something that we've been working on for a long time. Debbie and I are very familiar with the trails in the region. Many races overlap with the New England Trail, and this is a project that she's been working on that I joined her on, and we made happen. We just finished it at 12:19 a.m. on Tuesday. It was pretty rough at the end there, wasn't it?
Sure was. We were just trying to go as far and as fast as possible. There was many sleepless nights. The plan was to not really sleep, but to just rest for a couple hours each night, and mosquitoes thwarted that rest time many times. They also had a little challenge with getting water and having businesses be open to collect that water, because not only do you get it from streams, but you also use the convenience stores and businesses along the way. And visitor centers were closed. Some stores were closed, or sometimes you're passing them in the middle of the night. So the very end was rough. We miscalculated our mileage, but we wanted to push through the night to get to the finish. And all our electronics were dead, except for one flashlight. We even ended up with 2 dead cell phones at the end. But that's another logistical challenge for an adventure like this, is to keep your electronics up and working. We did finish just a little after midnight. Barely intact, but it was a wonderful adventure, and we pushed our limits, and that's what you ask for any adventure, right?
That's right. I think this was a culmination of many other adventures that we've pulled together over the years. We think the New England Trail is a great objective for anyone. It's really great for day hikes as well, or trail running on a daily basis. So check out my full blog post report about the adventure at scottlivingston.net, and you can track us down through the FKT website. But I guess on behalf of a couple of New England trail runners at the core, thanks for letting us share a bit about our story.
Take care.